Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Mark Hebert. Now, Mark is the president and CEO of Cosmo Music Superstore in Richmond Hill, Ontario. With the business starting way back in 1966, Cosmo Music has gone from a small mom-and-pop retail guitar shop to a behemoth 60,000 square foot building where you can experience anything music. Mark grew up in the business and was truly a driven entrepreneur and had a vision to help out the retail music all the way on the north side of the border. Cosmo Music provides an experience like no other to help kids and anyone else who is a lover of music. Mark's final words was their focus on family, and that really rang true for me. The importance of that statement can never be understated. Thank you, Mark, for everything you do to better the pond. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Hebert. Mark Hebert, President and CEO of Cosmo Music, all the way from Richmond Hill, Ontario. I'm so happy they took time out of your day to be a guest on the Better the Pond podcast. So happy to have you.
So happy to be here.
So we met. Should we give a little bit of shout out to the Helen?
Certainly.
Oh, yes. So Tech Canada, Helen Craft Jones, your chair, who had brought me in to speak. And that's where we had actually met. And of course, you were the victor. So now officially you're an official guest on the platform and getting out to the world on the Better the Pond podcast. But one of the things I have to say, Mark, is coming into your building, and I was sort of forewarned by Helen saying, this is a musical store like no other. You're going to be incredibly impressed. And so now it all started off in the morning when you threw me in the Martin guitar room, which I never wanted to leave. But unfortunately did have to speak that day. But anyway, and then you showed me around the building. And I tell you, that is a music store that is like nothing that I have ever seen. So I really want to dig into, who are you, right? What about the store? What are you doing to better the pond? And how can you help others? So that's where we're going to go today.
Certainly.
All right. Are you ready are you ready to take flight, Mark?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So tell us, to get off the ground here, tell us a little bit about Cosmo Music. What are you about? What do you do? I know you sell everything, so we don't have all day, but give us the glossy overview.
Certainly. So Cosmo Music was started in 1968 by my dad. He had recently come out of the Air Force. He was a mechanic in the Air Force, and he was in a band in the Air Force, and his passions was playing music. So when he got out, to make a long story short, he decided what he wanted to do was sell musical instruments. He had a previous stint at another music store and ended up opening which first started out as a guitar distribution company, where he was bringing guitars from Japan and Italy and selling them to other stores. Quickly turned into a retail store when he noticed he was selling more to the general public off the street than he was to other dealers across the country. Over the years, it's morphed into numerous different versions of itself. At one point, we had up to 5 different locations. And then we kind of had a vision where our main location was on Yonge Street, which, for those of you who don't know, Yonge Street is the longest street in the world, and it's mostly comprised of retail, like from the base of it, at least up to within the metropolitan areas. It's all kind of the hub of retail. All of that was changing, and we knew we had to get out of that location. So we decided we would slowly fold in our other locations, consolidate all of the staff, the best of the best staff from each of them, while planning out what we now refer to as a superstore. So one giant store to rule them all. That was in 2008. It was a bit of a build it and they will come moment. We didn't know what was going to happen, and thank goodness a lot of the projections and numbers kind of got blown out of the roof, because projections and numbers for expenses were also way higher than we had ever envisioned.
That never happened.
Yeah, that never happens. But so the budget was higher than we thought, but then the sales were fantastic. The first year we were in the facility, we doubled our sales. So it was really a fantastic moment. The store that we're in now is 60,000 square feet. We call it the largest interactive musical instrument store on the planet. There's a few that are bigger, but this one has more interactive space, service space. We have a repair shop with 25 technicians repairing everything from drums and keyboards to amplifiers, guitars, brass and wound instruments. We have lessons with 36 private rooms, large group size room, medium size rooms, and teach every instrument under the sun. We have educational rentals, which is flutes and clarinets, trumpets and trombones in the hands of school children clear across Southern Ontario. Over 10,000 instruments in the hands of school children, which is a lot of the time where parents and kids first learn who we are. We also do pro services and events, so kind of short-term rentals if you need a keyboard or a guitar for a gig over the weekend, or if you need us to run a full-fledged concert with staging and lighting, we do all of that stuff as well. We have a concert hall here in the store where we had our meeting with Helen on that day. It's a 250 person theater with full stage lighting and video services. I think I've got everything there. Basically anything to do with musical instruments aside from sales, all of the services that surround musical instruments, we do all of that.
Yeah, I have to say, and I said it earlier, I was literally overwhelmed when I got in there. I mean, seeing the front store is one thing as you weave through and you go, holy, like, here's all the wind instruments. There's just one area. Like the guitar room is like insane. But then there was, and the Martin room. Yes. which I was in heaven. I was absolutely in heaven. But the Taylor room, the keyboard room, the piano room, it was just something else. And then, that's just the front stage. That's just the front side of it. And then the back side was where, all the inventory and whatnot, and cases and the picks and the strings and everything else was like, it actually was really overwhelming to see this massive operation. I've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, a couple things we do differently are what you described. So on the front facing end, which is the things that people see, where we have kind of this brand authority of Cosmo Music, it's intentionally done, and it's an experiential kind of store. We intentionally put all sorts of different experiences from the different rooms we have, like you had explained, where we have like a specific Taylor room, a specific Martin room, et cetera, et cetera. We have dozens of spaces and rooms for different brands. To the theater is an experiential kind of thing. We've got a robotic fret dressing machine to support our repair shop. We've got a virtual acoustic environment where you go into like a cube. You may not have seen this, Warren, but because I didn't get the full tour with you, but we've got a room where you go into and you can dial in certain acoustic environments like concert hall, theater, Baroque room, and there's microphones and speakers in the walls, and so it makes you feel like you're in that space. So that's to help people select instruments. So all those experiences on the front end. And then on the back end, we're extremely heavy in online retail, and not just from our own website, but we expose our inventory on multiple marketplace channels from Amazon, eBay, Walmart, Best Buy, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not just selling on our own platform. There's many different platforms. And a lot of that is to expose our huge, our massive inventory, what we call long tail inventory count, to as many customers as possible to get high Google rankings. And it's less or so about drawing customers into our own store and more about keeping customers from an altruistic level up, buying stuff from Canadian retailers, both online and in store. So we prefer to see Canadians buying things from our wonderful network of independent musical instrument retailers north of the border. So we're heavily intentional on that goal.
So really pushing on the Canadian side of things. So that's how you're bettering the pond. So we're going to get there. So I have a couple quick questions for you. Well, actually, one question is, what is the most obscure instrument that you sell?
Oh, I'd say the one thing we don't sell, it's easier to say that to tell you what that is because we sell everything. Everything under the sun. The most like even world drumming instruments, different European fretted instruments, guitars, and odd instruments like that. We sell everything. We do, on the rare occasion, sell digital accordions. We don't sell like acoustic accordions, but there is a Roland digital accordion that we'll sell on occasion. Bagpipes. Bagpipes would be the one instrument we don't sell. We sell a small toy version of bagpipes, but that's a whole other realm that we don't dip our toes into.
And why, may I ask why? Why do not dip your toe into the bagpipe pool?
I don't think the market is that big, and we need specific expertise in the bagpipe industry to be able to sell it, and it's just not something we're capable of. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. So here's a little fun fact, which I know that you already know, but the listeners don't. In 1971, 65% of your lessons were accordion.
Oh yeah, where'd you get that fact from? The website?
A little fun fact: 65% of lessons was accordion. That what was going on in that era? 1971 was the time of, like, heavy, like, psychedelic rock and long hair, and
that wasn't just us. That's not a fact that's just for us. That would be, I'm pretty certain that would be an industry-wide fact. So back then, everyone put their kids typically in piano or accordion lessons. So that was a common thing.
Okay, and I hope that, and I'm sure that era didn't last long.
Thankfully no.
Thankfully no. All right, one last
no offense to all of our accordion playing friends.
Yes. That and the bagpipes.
Yeah.
So one last thing I just want to touch on, and then we'll move on. But one of the things that was really fascinating to me that you showed was your pedal area, guitar pedal. I won't call it room because it's not really a room, but it's the area. And of course, and you showed me, like, there was like a multitude, like a mammoth amount of pedals, and you said, well, you can basically, they're all hooked up, so you can kind of take anything you want and make anything out of it. And I believe that you said that it was a challenge with the Guinness Book World Records for most pedals. Is that correct?
We haven't submitted for that yet, but there's discussion about it because it is the largest at the moment. But yeah, it's called Pedal Planet. There's over 500 active pedals, which are all plugged in and usable. It's only 1/3 of the pedals we actually carry in stock. We have over 1,500 pedals in stock at any given time, but those are probably the most common, or the ones that are purchased the most. And all of them you can use all of them simultaneously with some finagling of the patch panels. But we custom designed these patch panels on each vertical board of 16, I believe it's 16 pedals, where you can patch any one of them together. You can play test any one of them. You can patch them together in any order you want, so you can reorder them. And then if you want, you can patch into other alternate panels around this area and patch any panel together. So in the olden days, there were versions of this that were small, like a manufacturer would come out with a display where you could actually use some of their pedals and play test them. But it's not common where you can use any one of them. So you come in for a tremolo effect pedal, or distortion pedal, you can come in and actually try them just by plugging your guitar into the panel where that pedal exists, and try each one of them and compare one at a time, and pick and choose which brand of distortion pedal you purchase. And that's uncommon. So yeah. It's a rollout of one of these experiential things that's actually the most recent experience kind of thing within the store that we've rolled out. So everything we do in the store, when we make a change or a conversion of a certain area, it's all the discussion is always about what kind of experience is this going to give customers when they come in.
Yeah, and so just to wrap this up, I mean, one of the things, when I walked in the building, I went, this is something like I've never seen. It was really very, like, unbelievably impressive. from start to finish, front, back, and then I see the little nuances in there of the pedals, whatever. And just want to showcase how unique and how special Cosmo Music is. Like you're a world-class operation in Richmond Hill, Ontario.
We try our best. It's worth the drive to Richmond Hill.
It is worth the drive. I'm coming back there just to go there. So, all right. Okay, here we go, Mark. So what got you from being a gosling to leaving the nest? Now, when you're leaving the nest, I mean like heading out on your own. So gosling is when you were born, right? When you were hatched, beginning of life, you were born at a very young age, I'm sure. And to leaving the nest, I mean, so when you left, now either you left on your own and said, I'm going to go, get going on my own, or you were kicked out of the nest and said, fly, my son. And because they didn't want you around, who knows? And to where you are today, what's got you as president and CEO of Cosmo Music. So Mark Hebert, what's your backstory?
This one's not as exciting as you might think, but I was born and raised for this position. So I was born. My father started, as I said, in 68, earlier than 68 even, and I was born in 75, and grew up in the store. So every iteration of it, as it moved and grew over the years, I was a part of it. I started working really early. I was helping out, like when I was a small child, but officially working when I was 13. And every hour I could carve out I would come home from grade school and go straight to the store and work. I would, high school, I would make sure I set my schedule so I had days off. So I kind of pile all of the classes into as few days possible so I can get more time in. Part of that was I loved the business, and part of it is I liked working and I liked being independent. So I liked my own source of income. It allowed me to have my own cars when I was young, get my license the day I turned 16, and I really liked that independence. I don't know if when I was super young I ever envisioned that I would take over the business, but I think it was just part of my blood. And so when I was in my early 20s, there was just a natural transition between my father and I, guided with my mom, and my father went home, and I just continued down that path and turned the business into something much larger. So I had a little bit more, I'd say, digital expertise. I came from an era where computers had just, I had a laptop in the early days, bringing to university. So I brought all that, changed the ERP, instituted a digital computer-based ERP system, digitized all the sales, started collecting data, CRM usage, making everything more data-driven and oriented. And over that time period, built the company from 5 to 6 million to over 40 million.
Wow. So as you were going into that digital space, that was sort of your expertise coming into the next phase. Was your dad still part of the company then, or was it sort of handed over by that point?
My dad always was a part of it. My dad is very, his intuition is very good. So even though he's not educated in finance, he'll look at a P&L and go, this doesn't look right. I mean, it's the years of not having a CFO or someone who was good with numbers and having to figure it out on his own, that he became astute at figuring things out. And so he'd get numbers at home and point things out, which was always very helpful. But the daily, let's call it, management of the team and building of the business, that was me.
So he was I was going to say good enough, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but to kind of let you spread your wings, so he could sort of hand it off the torch and let's say, here, you can start to run this thing, rather than hanging on to what was. He was more allowing what could be.
I'd say the way you put it sounds wonderful. It wasn't that easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
It's a difficult transition. Multi-generational companies. That's a hard thing, right? It's a hard thing to pass from one generation to another. And so there were a lot of difficult moments, but we got through it.
Mhm.
And now one day, maybe I pass it to someone. I'm not sure if my kids would be interested or not,
Mhm.
or my sister's kids, because I've got a sister. I've got two sisters, all of whom have children. And I mean, hopefully someone would be interested, but if not, then it just gets, it keeps going with an independent management team, or
Right.
who knows?
Who knows? So a couple of little tidbit questions. Number one, what was your first car?
My first car, my parents helped me buy my first car. They may have purchased the whole thing, or if it was a half and half deal. I don't remember, but that's a funny story because I remember looking for a car with my dad, and wanting, all the kids at that age were getting these like 2-liter Mustangs, just inexpensive Mustangs, and I was raring to drive. It was the one thing I always wanted to do, and so we looked at a Mustang, and then we went into a Suzuki. You remember Suzuki? I don't think they exist in Canada anymore, but we went into a Suzuki store, and there was this banana yellow Sidekick, banana yellow in color,
Yeah.
not in model. And my dad fell in love with it. Me, not so much, but he was supporting financially the purchase. So who was I to say to question it? So we ended up buying this banana yellow Sidekick, which was like a small Jeep. For those who wouldn't remember what that was,
I remember that.
but the problem with that is I couldn't go anywhere without people knowing who I was from a long distance away. So it made it difficult driving girlfriends around, trying to hide somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe your dad's intuition was better than you thought.
I think he knew what he was doing.
That's too funny. So when you were in like going to high school in your late teen years, did you know that you were going to be taking over the store? Did you know that this was going to be sort of your path, or was there anything else you dreamed about?
I think I knew that this was the path forward. Um, there, I think in the younger years, I think I always had a retail bones, or a retail kind of passion, which I didn't really know. But I do recall in my younger years with my best friend growing up, we always dreamt about opening up a stereo store, like a consumer stereo store. That was what I mean. We loved our little ghetto blasters and our stereos, and like when CDs came out, it was like, who can get the first one with a CD player? So we were really into that and thought that was the path forward. Thank goodness that was not the path forward. I wouldn't want to be in that industry. Not that that industry is bad, but you know, I'm sure it's a difficult, just like musical instruments, probably a difficult industry to survive in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I always thought this was where I would be.
All right. And then last question is when you left the nest, so you left home, did you leave home or did you get encouraged to remove yourself?
I left home when I went to university. That was when I first left home. I went to Western. I think it's called Western University now. It used to be called University Western Ontario.
Right.
Um, that was when I left home, and that was an experience. I did come back briefly after I was finished school, but then bought my first house, very early on. Because I was a pretty savvy investor, so I knew the real estate market was where I wanted to be from a personal finance standpoint. So I bought my first home, I think, when I was 21, and then I owned several homes since then. But that's essentially when I left the nest.
Wow. So you bought your first house at 21.
Yeah, I believe I was 21.
I was 24. I thought I was doing well.
I had already had within not only was I working every hour I could within Cosmo Music, I also had several vending machines. So I was running a vending machine business within the store, which I was drawing in quite a bit of cash, which I had saved up. So I bought second car with that money, and then it led to having enough money for a deposit on a home, which was ultimately what I wanted to have.
Well, apparently you have always been very entrepreneurially minded.
I didn't look at it that way at the time, but I guess so.
Looking back at it. All right.
Looking back at it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what's the greatest thing, positive or negative, that's ever happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Yeah, I'd say in retrospect, the greatest thing that happened to me was COVID.
Oh,
And I don't know if I've heard this answer from many people before. I don't know if you've ever gotten this answer during your podcast, but COVID, with being at home, made me understand the importance of family.
huh.
So being home, having dinner with my kids every day, um, kind of getting realigned with who they were. I mean, they weren't too young at the time. They were already, two of them were already in their teens. Um, but being home every day, having dinner with them, made me realize the importance of family, and uh, made me restructure how I thought about life. Like it's not just about work. I was working a lot before that. Before that, like every day, I didn't see them wake up in the morning. I didn't see them go to bed at night. Um, I never had a meal with them other than on weekends, and that kind of made me realign. And I don't think there's anything better that's happened to me than that.
Hmm.
I'm grateful that happened, or else I would have been looking back and regretting never spending time with my kids, and they would have been grown up and out of the house and gone, and I never would have gotten to connect with them.
Right. Yeah, and I was just going to say, just in that thought process is, how do you think that that's impacted them, right? Like on the flip side, like looking at the world through their eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully they take some learnings from that, in that, you know, you don't have to work as hard as what dad worked before. You always want your kids to have a good work ethic, but you want them to have a work-life balance as well. So, and understand that family is important. It's not just about working. Um, so hopefully that's what they got from that. Plus, knowing me, getting to know me a lot better than they knew me before, uh, which was nice.
Yeah, it's interesting, that saying, being entrepreneurially minded, is, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I know for myself, just, driven. I'm driving, right? I'm going to get this thing done. I have a dream. I'm going to achieve it. I'm going to go and kind of, trample everything around you, trying to get where it is. And then, and then all of a sudden you look back and say, yeah, how much time did I spend with my kids, and how many times did I have meals? And, and you don't want to live a life of regret, but it's interesting how we kind of, how we push so hard, because, and we're doing it with great intention, right? We're doing it to support, but we're supporting, but we're never there. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing.
I'd say combined with that is, I mean, we met at Tech, and I've been in, which is Vistage in the US.
Mm.
And Tech's been an important part of my life. I've been in it for 9 years. My current chair, Helen, fantastic. She's relatively new, but our retired chair, David Rubin, who just won a Hall of Fame award in Tech, he helped me get through kind of changing my mindset when it comes to work, and kind of getting out of the weeds. So instead of actually doing all sorts of things, getting caught up in rabbit holes of doing things myself, which for me, my passion was purchasing. So I loved buying stuff. And so we have a VP of purchasing, but I would help him all the time because I loved it. Or working in the warehouse, I would work in the warehouse a lot, just to help out, get past, some crunch time things. Not that that's not important. So it's not that I won't ever do it again, but I was filling a lot of my extra time with that, instead of going home and spending time with my kids. So I still try to do that, because you want to be, you want to lead by example. But David helped me get to the point where I came to realize I had to get out of the weeds. Like I had to be a leader, and not a doer. It's not just about leading by example. You actually have to lead as well.
Yeah, exactly. That is sage advice right there. So, for the record, guess who is now officially a Tech Canada member?
You are.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. So it's I always say, if you want to, walk the walk, you don't have to talk the talk, walk the walk. So, yeah. So I joined this month. It's my first month as a member.
It's amazing. Tech is, a lot of people question it, and not everybody has a good experience. It's all about the group you're with
Mhm.
and your willingness to open up and share and participate and help. And I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter what you do, it's all relevant. And just having, an amazing group, anywhere between, 8 to 18 members in your group. These are all extremely smart people, like-minded and resourceful, and you can count on all of them for information and help. So it's literally like having that many CEOs in your company. But you're the one who calls the shots in the end. But countless times, either I brought up issues or someone in the group has brought up an issue, and we've processed the issue, and that person, myself or whomever it is, has left with a much clearer idea on a path forward. So it's extremely helpful. This isn't a tech commercial, but it's something definitely that I would attribute to a significant part of either my success or my comfort with being in my role.
How about embrace the
Mm-hmm.
success and the comfort?
For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So now here we go. What are you doing right now to better the pond, Mark? What ripples are you creating out there in the world, and how are you inspiring others? So what are you or Cosmo, what are you doing to create an impact on the world and create some waves?
Sure. I mean, this isn't the answer that I wrote down, but it kind of ties into it. I talked about here about venturing into the digital realm and data centric model kind of space. But you pointed out earlier that something we're doing that's different is we're embracing the whole notion that increasing the market in general is helpful to us and our market share. So we started years ago talking about, let's not be overly concerned about stealing market share from competitors. That's not, what good does that do us? And instead, we all started focusing on increasing the market. So increasing more players, increasing the amount of customers who shop north of the border, because that was starting to become an issue. Supporting independent retailers as opposed to shopping on marketplace channels. Again, we sell a lot on marketplace channels, but the intention isn't to sell on the marketplace channels. It's to keep Google listings and product listings available above the border and guiding customers in the right direction to independent retailers. But focusing on that, in fact, over COVID, we acquired a distributor. So one of the Canadian distributors in the landscape here, we actually bought them, and now we distribute products to other dealers as well. And we work with them actively to help promote those products, to help give them deeper margins. So again, being partners with, instead of looking at them in an adversarial way, working with all of our independent dealer friends across the country to help improve the overall market. Because in the end, the way we see it is that our sales will grow as a result, and customers appreciate the honesty.
Mm-hmm.
So when a customer calls in, if we don't have something in stock and we know another store has it, we will direct that customer to another store. We'll do what's right for the customer and what's right for the independent dealer network. So it's something different. It's a different way to look at it.
I was at a podcast here with a guy by the name Byron Brooks, and we were talking, this is way back early in the podcast series. Anyway, we created a word in the midst of it, and it was collaboration.
Ooh.
And it was collaborating with your competition.
Yeah.
Right. And for the best interest of your customer.
Yeah, for sure.
There you have an officially new word that does not exist. It's not on Wikipedia.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gone over well, and I think discussing the whole concept and idea with other dealers across the country is slowly changing the mindset of everybody. And I think in Canada we're lucky to have already had. I think people in general and store owners and entrepreneurs in general in Canada are much more collaborative in nature. So we had a better starting point than the US would ever have. But I think we've gotten much better as well through this kind of conversation where let's all help each other and grow, per capita spend on musical instrument products in the country, and we all win, right? It's not just about you or not just about it's about all of us, and how can we increase the market and we all get a bigger piece.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that mindset. So it's going to take me to my next question here, and is the geese, as you know, because you're now officially a gooseologist, the geese fly 71% further and faster when flying in the V formation. So what do you think the secret is to flying in the V formation? I'm putting it this way because it's just something you just said was, how we all win. So I'm not sure if you can put those two pieces together of whether it's the, running your team at Cosmo Music or what about with your retailers?
So I actually had put, brief notes next to the question here, which could apply to either customers or my internal senior leadership team here. I put trust and autonomy. And I think trusting your customers to make the right choice, by providing the service to be in that mind frame, is always the best option. And the same here, with my team, they have full trust and autonomy, and I let them make their own mistakes. So I think think of the V formation is the leader goose telling them, squawking at them, get in line. No, it's just they're fully autonomous. They just know what they need to do, and they do it because they know it's for the betterment of the group. So and that works. That mentality works for customers. It works for your internal leadership team. It works for all the teams that trickle down below that senior leadership level. And I think it's an important thing to consider.
I always say, geese don't honk to complain.
Yeah.
They honk to communicate. That's why they're always honking, because they're always communicating with one another. And it's a really, I always say about listening to nature, right? Nature doesn't try. Nature just does.
Yeah.
They trust their instincts, and that's sort of where I was trying to go. So as long as we're not squawking, right? We're not honking to complain. We're honking to communicate, and we keep getting that message out, and it gets clearer, right? Then people know just naturally what to do, and you give them what I like what you said is you give them the autonomy, and you let them make mistakes. Anyway, you let them learn, because Lord knows you don't have all the answers, and neither do I.
Yeah, it's important to let them learn on their own. So not only do they make their own mistakes, that the challenges and then ultimately the wins, they perceive themselves as making them. So they perceive the choices being made by themselves, which has caused them to win or lose, right? And it's less about the losing, it's more about the wins. So there's always a win from a failure. And if they believe they've done that themselves and it wasn't under your guidance and it wasn't because you told them to do it, then they're going to better themselves step by step.
They perceive the win. There, I just made a note of that. That's good stuff right there.
Yeah, I never tell my team what to do. I plant ideas in their head and guide them in the direction so they ultimately make the choice.
Right, which is called empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so therefore, when you're flying in the V formation, when you can do that successfully, you get to lead from behind.
That's right. And you get all the excrement.
Well, it goes down. It goes down.
Okay.
Goes down.
Well, it depends on how fast they're flying.
Yes, true. Do you want to? I just want to jump on this for a little bit, Mark. Just I don't know if you want to talk about this about the Coalition for Music Education, the Ontario Music Education Educators Association, the NAM Foundation. You're helping sick kids and Music Alive. So there's all the things that I see that you're also doing to better the pond. Do you want to jump on that just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of those are trade organizations, which continue along the same theme that I was discussing before about, increasing the music making community. They're all people we support that in turn help increase the amount of music makers, music advocacy, education, all that kind of thing. The Sick Kids Foundation, that was a internally selected. So we call them cosmonauts, our internal teams. They're called cosmonauts. They selected that was back 7 or 8 years ago, maybe longer. They kind of selected that as our charity of choice. And so whenever we do a campaign drive, typically through, some kind of staff kind of thing, that's our charity of choice. We also have it's kind of an on and off program. We're looking to reboot it now. It's a Cosmo Music Scholarship Foundation, where we collect money for keen music kids that are recognized through music programs and their teachers and their principals at schools, but may not have the wherewithal to be able to afford private music education. So we collect music on their behalf and then subsidize with that money half of the private music education, and then Cosmo subsidizes the other half, and we can give keen music kids private instruction on instruments, which is something they may not have been able to afford without the support of the Scholarship Foundation.
Have you had kids come through that program already, or quite a few? Or
we're still building the foundation, and the reason I said we're rebooting it because over COVID, there were no music programs, at least in Ontario. All of the musical instrument programs were canceled temporarily, so we're just building those back up, and the program will come back. The foundation will come back as soon as those all of those programs are back up and running.
And just one last thing is, I was looking when I was at your place about with the school rental program and those kind of things like that in that area. It was huge. But, just the importance of music, the importance of learning music, the importance of being able to play an instrument, I think is really important in just a person's development or a child's development. And that's just so nice to see that you guys are playing, such a big part in making that, because those are the ripples that you're creating that I see.
For sure. I mean, part of a well-rounded education is music and arts, right? As well as sports, right? So it's not just about the core subjects; those are important, but to have a well-rounded human being at the end of their education, these things are equally as important. At least we believe them to be. There's a million statistics I can quote, but fundamentally most successful people have taken music and arts and sports. So these are important components of a well-rounded education.
Well, I will say that my guitar saved my rear end in college, because it was really quite interesting, because I would find myself, I was reading textbooks, I could go for so long and my brain would just shut down and be like, what did I just read? And so what I would do, so I'd study for 40 minutes, pick up my guitar, play for 20, go back, study for 40, play guitar for 20. And that was me recharging my own batteries. I didn't know what I was doing, and now I know why I did it. But that was my, instead of keep trying to pound away and pound away and pound away, right? My guitar was my outlet, which allowed me to kind of recharge. So there was, there's an instrument in music, right, that actually helped me perform better.
Yeah, and the reality is, it's soothing and it makes your mind feel clearer, but you're actually ultimately wiring your brain for logic, reason, and math, really, right? Because music is math. Look at the scale. When you play chords or when you play notes, it's all about math, and you're wiring your brain that way. So it's good. It's a good exercise to do for your brain.
So there you go. See, you're helping education.
Of course.
All right. So now, you being an entrepreneur yourself, so what is one lesson that you've learned along your journey that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
The one I would share, which is common, I'm sure everyone's heard it before, it's the truth, is surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and recognize that. Recognize that you can't be the smartest in the room at all times. In fact, you shouldn't be. And if you are, there's a problem. The role of a leader, especially in the CEO chair, is not to manage, but to mentor. So it's not to tell people what to do. It's to surround yourself with people who know what to do and know what to do better than yourself. And that would be the biggest thing I would say is important to learn and understand.
How hard do you think that is for people to do? Because when I hear you say that, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But what I find is that sometimes people's egos won't allow them.
I don't know if it's about ego. It's about getting. I think it's about getting out of the weeds. I think it's more difficult when you bootstrap a business from the get-go, and you're used to doing everything on your own and letting go. That letting go part or piece is often difficult. Like letting go of the first task. You hire your first employee to do a certain task. It's hard because you want it done a certain way, and you're unwilling to accept something that's not exactly how you may have done it. As your business grows, you have to keep giving pieces away. I remember giving kind of the finance component away, and that was difficult for me. And we hired a CFO, and as stress relieving as that was, because I didn't have to deal with it anymore, it was a little bit disconcerting because I didn't have direct control over it anymore. Or when I said it earlier in the Pondcast that I had a passion for purchasing, so I had to give that up. And when I gave it up, I kind of lost a piece of myself, because that is truly what I enjoyed. But it was the best thing to do. So giving those things up and putting them in the hands of people who can do it better. And even if they can't do it better, your time is more wisely spent doing more important things, like working on your business instead of in your business. And again, another commonly said phrase, but it's the truth. You should be working on your business and not in your business.
Hence the E-Myth, one of the greatest business books around, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite books.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I have one last question for you that you don't have, Mark, and I'm going to throw you on the spot here. So here's the question. If you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
I think I've reached the age that what I would say is, remember to focus on family. That's what's most important. Focus on your family. Work and money isn't everything. It's all about love and the people who are surrounding you, your wife, your children. That's what matters in life. And it sometimes takes a while to get that, to understand that, because you're so focused on your business and you're focused on your day-to-day activities and your to-do lists and your email inbox. A lot of people forget that, but everything needs to come back to that.
I love it. That, you know what? You're one of the first persons to say that.
That surprises me.
No, it's I mean, there's been roundabout ways, but no one's actually said focus on family. So there you go. So now another point of what makes you different. So Cosmo's different, right? Of how they do things, right? Mark Hebert's different, how he sees the world, right? And then all those little pieces that you put together is what you do to better the pond.
For sure.
All right. So I want to thank you, Mark, for your time. I want to thank you for your stories. I want to thank you for the ripples that you're creating. And if anyone wants to find you, where do they go?
They can go to cosmomusic.ca.
And what about you on any social media? Do you participate in that world at all?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find my email on our leadership team are all in the About Us page on cosmomusic.ca, so you can find my contact information there.
Okay.
or you can reach me through any of the contact through Cosmo as well.
Okay, so go to Cosmo.
Cosmomusic.ca.
Cosmomusic.ca. We'll get that in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Are you active on LinkedIn? Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Social media isn't for everyone. So, okay. Well, there you have it, folks. We had a great time here today and with Mark Hebert, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond because we're better together. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Warren.